What if some of the most powerful medicines ever discovered were not lost by accident, but were deliberately hidden, hoarded, and kept from ordinary people for centuries? Most people assume ancient remedies faded away because they did not work. But the truth is far more interesting. Many of them worked so well that they became weapons of power, guarded by priests, monopolised by empires, restricted to royalty, and in some cases literally erased from history when the civilizations that controlled them collapsed. These were not folk remedies passed around freely, these were state secrets. And today, I'm going to reveal 10 of them that modern science has finally proven were worth hiding. Stick around because number 6 on this list was restricted exclusively to Egyptian pharaohs and their inner circle for over 1,000 years. Biochemists recently discovered it contains a compound that outperforms synthetic antibiotics against resistant bacteria. Number 10 was so fiercely guarded that the civilization controlling it invented fake origin stories and killed anyone who tried to find the real source. When scientists finally analysed it, they found over 12,000 published studies confirming what the ancients already knew. If you want forgotten wisdom backed by a hard science delivered straight to you every week, hit that subscribe button. You genuinely do not want to miss what is coming. Alright, let's get into it. Here are 10 forbidden remedies, the ancient world kept secret, ranked from remarkable to absolutely mind-blowing. We'll begin with something that was hidden in plain sight for centuries, Silphium, a plant so valuable to the Roman Empire that its image was stamped on currency. Julius Caesar stored over 680 kilograms of it in the state treasury alongside gold and silver. Physicians prescribed it for coughs, fevers, digestive ailments, and contraception. The Roman Senate regulated its harvest. Export was controlled, and the plant grew in only one narrow strip of coastal Cyrenaica in modern Libya. Rome didn't just value Silphium, Rome monopolised it, and when demand outstripped supply and the last known plant was reportedly harvested and sent to Emperor Nero as a curiosity, the most powerful medicine in the classical world vanished forever. Modern analysis of related ferula species has found compounds with genuine anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, and hormonal activity. The claims weren't exaggerated. The plant was simply consumed into extinction by the empire that couldn't share it. Silphium is proof that the most dangerous thing that can happen to a powerful remedy isn't being forgotten. It's being too valuable to survive. And Silphium wasn't the only remedy Rome controlled. There was a resin arriving on merchant ships from the Horn of Africa that the empire taxed so heavily it generated more revenue than many provinces. Myrrh. Most people know it from the nativity story, but Myrrh's real history is far darker and more strategic. Egyptian embalmers guarded their myrrh formulations as trade secrets for over 2,000 years. The methods for preparing medical-grade myrrh were restricted knowledge, passed only between priestly classes. Greek military physicians kept their wound treatment protocols classified, and Rome taxed the myrrh trade at 25% at the port of Alexandria, deliberately keeping prices high enough that common citizens could not access it freely. Here is what they were protecting. Myrrh contains terpenoids with broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity, effective against bacteria, fungi, and resistant strains. Studies confirm genuine analgesic effects through opioid receptor interaction. In an age when a simple wound infection meant death, controlling the supply of an effective antiseptic meant control over who lived and who did not. The traditional preparation, myrrh dissolved in wine for wound cleaning and infection, was simple enough that anyone could have made it. That is precisely why access was restricted. Think of it as the ancient world's classified antibiotic, available to those with power, denied to those without. But while Rome was taxing resins, a completely different kind of secret was being kept on the other side of the world. In China, an emperor's court physician named Ge Hong recorded a remedy for malaria in the 4th century, using sweet wormwood, Artemisia annua. The recipe was specific. Soak the plant in cold water, wring it out and drink the juice. Do not boil it, do not dry it. Cold extraction only. This detail was critical, and it was buried in a text called Emergency Prescriptions Kept Up One's Sleeve, a title that tells you this knowledge was not meant for wide circulation. It was a physician's private notebook. The recipe stayed hidden for over 1,600 years, until Chinese scientist Tu Youyou rediscovered it in 1972 while searching ancient texts for a malaria cure during the Vietnam War era. She followed Ge Hong's cold extraction method, isolated the compound artemisinin, and created what is now the world's frontline treatment for malaria. Tu Youyou won the Nobel Prize in 2015. Artemisinin has saved millions of lives, and it was sitting in a restricted medical text for over a millennium and a half, waiting for someone to read it carefully enough. Now, if artemisinin was hidden in a private notebook, the next remedy was hidden inside a religion. Ashwagandha. In Ayurvedic medicine, the most potent healing formulations were called rasayana, meaning path of essence. These were not public knowledge. They were transmitted orally from teacher to student within specific lineages, and the preparation methods were guarded as sacred. Ashwagandha, Withania somnifera, was among the most restricted of these formulations because it was considered too powerful for unsupervised use. Here is what modern science found. Ashwagandha contains withanolides. Clinical trials have shown these compounds reduce cortisol levels by up to 30%, improve sleep quality, increase muscle strength and recovery, and enhance cognitive function under stress. Cortisol, the stress hormone, is one of the most destructive compounds your body produces when it stays chronically elevated. It breaks down collagen, weakens immunity, shrinks brain tissue, and accelerates aging at every level. A compound that reliably lowers cortisol by 30% is not a supplement. It is an intervention. The Ayurvedic masters who restricted it understood something we are only now confirming. This plant changes your biochemistry, and biochemistry that powerful deserved careful handling. From India's guarded lineages, we moved to the Arabian Peninsula, where another remedy was kept behind even thicker walls of secrecy: black cumin seed. The Prophet Muhammad reportedly called Nigella sativa a cure for everything except death. But what most people do not know is that black cumin's medicinal preparation methods were closely held within specific scholarly and medical traditions across the Islamic world for centuries. The great physician Ibn Sina documented it in the Canon of Medicine, a text that was itself restricted to educated elites. A bottle of black cumin oil was found sealed in King Tutankhamun's tomb, placed there specifically for the afterlife. You do not bury medicine with a god king unless that medicine is considered irreplaceable. The active compound is thymoquinone. Modern research is staggering. Clinical trials show it improves blood sugar control, reduces blood pressure, lowers cholesterol, and enhances immune response. But here is the part that has oncologists paying attention. Thymoquinone induces apoptosis, programmed cell death in multiple cancer cell lines, while leaving healthy cells largely unaffected. The breadth of validated effects from a single plant compound is almost unprecedented. A teaspoon of the oil daily, mixed with honey, was the traditional dose. The remedy the ancient world buried with its kings is now backed by more clinical evidence than most over-the-counter drugs. If you are starting to realize that these were not quaint folk remedies but genuinely powerful compounds that were restricted for strategic reasons, please hit the like button. It helps this video reach other people who deserve to know what was hidden from them. And if you have not subscribed yet, do so now, because we are about to get into the ones that will genuinely stun you. The next remedy was restricted for the most literal reason possible. It was physically locked inside the temples of ancient Egypt for over 1,000 years. Frankincense. Boswellia resin was burned in Egyptian temples daily, but the highest grade frankincense, the tears harvested from the oldest trees in specific groves along the Somali coast and southern Arabia, was reserved exclusively for pharaohs, high priests, and the most sacred rituals. Common Egyptians never touched it. The groves themselves were guarded. Trade routes were militarized. The land of Punt, where the finest frankincense originated, was so strategically important that Queen Hatshepsut sent an entire naval expedition to secure direct access and bypass middlemen. And here is why it was worth all of that. Frankincense contains boswellic acids, particularly AKBA, that inhibit 5-lipoxygenase, a key enzyme driving chronic inflammation. Clinical trials show significant improvement in osteoarthritis, asthma, and inflammatory bowel disease. Recent studies have found AKBA induces apoptosis in cancer cell lines and shows effects on cellular senescence. The compound the priests kept locked in their temples is now the subject of over 2,000 published research papers. They were not burning incense for ambience, they were administering medicine, and they made absolutely certain nobody else had access to the good stuff. Now, frankincense was locked behind temple walls, but the next remedy was locked behind something even harder to penetrate: language. Soma, the mysterious plant described in the Rig Veda, one of the oldest sacred texts in existence, was called a drink that conferred immortality, superhuman strength and divine vision. The preparation ritual was so secretive that it was conducted in Vedic Sanskrit, a liturgical language accessible only to the highest priestly caste. And then, sometime around 1000 BC, the identity of the original Soma plant was lost entirely. Scholars have debated it for centuries. The leading candidates include ephedra, Amanita muscaria and Syrian rue, all of which contain genuinely psychoactive or physiologically powerful compounds. Ephedra contains ephedrine, a stimulant and bronchodilator still used in modern medicine. Syrian rue contains harmine, a compound with demonstrated antidepressant, neuroprotective and antiparasitic effects. Whatever Soma actually was, the Vedic priests made certain that its identity died with their tradition. The most powerful remedy in the oldest scripture on earth was hidden so effectively that we still cannot confirm what it was. That is not forgetting. That is engineering secrecy. From a mystery lost to language, we turn to one hidden behind geography. Dragon's blood. A deep crimson resin harvested from Dracaena trees on the island of Socotra off the coast of Yemen. For centuries, Socotra was one of the most isolated inhabited islands on Earth. Arab traders controlled access and fabricated stories about the resin's origin to prevent competitors from finding the source. Pliny the Elder wrote about it. Roman gladiators used it to treat combat wounds. Chinese physicians prescribed it for internal bleeding, but the actual trees and their location were kept deliberately obscure. The resin contains taspine, an alkaloid with clinically proven wound-healing properties. Studies confirm it accelerates tissue regeneration, reduces inflammation, and exhibits antimicrobial activity. The gladiators who survived the arena had access to one of the most effective wound-healing compounds in nature, and the traders who supplied it made sure nobody knew exactly where it came from. If dragon's blood was hidden by geography, the next remedy was hidden by something far more systematic: deliberate disinformation. The entire ancient cinnamon trade was built on lies. Arab merchants who controlled the spice routes invented elaborate fictions about cinnamon's origin. Giant birds guarded cinnamon nests on unreachable cliffs. Serpents protected cinnamon groves in uncharted valleys. The stories were absurd, but they worked for centuries. Herodotus recorded them as fact, and the deception kept cinnamon prices higher than gold across the Mediterranean world. Nero burned a year's supply at his wife's funeral just to demonstrate wealth. Here's what the merchants were protecting. Cinnamon bark contained cinnamaldehyde, a compound with documented effects on blood sugar regulation, insulin sensitivity, antimicrobial defense, and inflammatory suppression. Clinical trials show cinnamon supplementation significantly improves metabolic markers in people with type 2 diabetes. Its antioxidant concentration outranks nearly every other spice tested. The most elaborate deception campaign in the history of commerce was built to protect a metabolic medicine that costs pennies today. The spice they killed to keep secret is now sitting in your kitchen, and it still works exactly as it did when empires lied to control it. And that brings us to number 10, the remedy with the most dramatic secrecy story on this entire list, and the one that modern science has validated more thoroughly than almost any other natural compound in existence. Turmeric, the golden goddess of Ayurveda. In ancient India, the most advanced medical formulations were not written down. They were transmitted orally within closed guru-student lineages called Gurukula. Turmeric's most potent preparations, the specific ratios, the combination with black pepper and fat to enhance absorption, and the fermentation techniques that increased bioavailability were proprietary knowledge held within these lineages for millennia. When outside scholars tried to document Ayurvedic formulations, they were often given incomplete or deliberately altered recipes. The real knowledge stayed inside the tradition, and the tradition was protecting something extraordinary. Curcumin is the active compound in turmeric, and it has over 12,000 published studies behind it. Clinical trials show it reduces systemic inflammation, improves arthritis symptoms, fights depression, supports liver function, and demonstrates anti-tumor properties in multiple cancer models. The bioavailability problem that limits curcumin absorption was solved by Ayurvedic practitioners thousands of years ago by combining turmeric with piperine from black pepper and with dietary fat. They did not know the biochemistry, they knew the results, and they guarded those results fiercely. Here's what ties this entire list together. Every remedy we've covered today was hidden for the same fundamental reason. It worked. Silphium was monopolised because it worked. Myrrh was taxed because it worked. Artemisinin was buried in a private notebook because it worked. Ashwagandha was restricted to lineages because it worked. The pattern is not that ancient people were superstitious or secretive by nature. The pattern is that genuinely powerful medicine has always been treated as a strategic asset. It was controlled, restricted, monetized, and kept from the people who needed it most. The difference now is that the science is public, the clinical trials are published, the compounds are identified, the secrets are out. And for the first time in history, you do not need to be a pharaoh, a priest, or a Roman senator to access what was hidden for thousands of years. Drop a comment below and tell me which secret surprised you most. Are you Team Lost Plants, Team Guarded Resins, or Team Hidden Formulations? I read every single comment. If you have not subscribed yet, hit that button now and ring the bell. We post every week, and we are just getting started. See you in the next one.